What's up, New Hope family? Welcome to the Grow Podcast. My name is David. With me, as always, is Pastor Mark. We're here to help you take a next step in your relationship with Jesus. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, and welcome to episode 130 of the Grow Podcast. I think we're almost positive this is 130, but I didn't have it written down before we sat down. So
we'll go with it.
Forgive us. It'll say 129 down below if we're wrong, but I think it's 130. Pastor Mark is with me.
Do we need forgiveness for calling it the wrong number?
We might, yeah. Should we preemptively ask for is it wrong to ask for forgiveness if you didn't do a wrong thing? Because we may not have done a wrong thing.
Oh,
Pastor?
That is always a good question. Because we were just talking about that the other day.
If we did something wrong, we are sorry.
If someone feels offended and hurt,
Sure.
then whether or not you intended it
Right.
or even did it, their feelings matter, and you've got to address
So
that.
if
So
anyone
it
is
might
offended or
require-
hurt by me calling this episode 130,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I think this is totally inane because nobody cares what number we call it.
someone does. Someone's out there like counting them down.
Keeping
Like,
track.
I can't wait for 137.
There's
Like, that's
always somebody that keeps track.
But we're pretty sure this is episode 130. Happy New Year, by the way, to everybody. By the time it's not New Year's right now, to clarify. We don't come in at like 5 a.m.,
Right.
record this, and then post it at 6 a.m. Although maybe we give that a try. You're usually up at 5 a.m., you say?
I often am up at 5 a.m.
am not unless one of my kids decides that I'm up at 5 a.m., so I don't want to do that. But when you are able to watch or listen to this, it is New Year's. So Happy New Year's, everybody.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Do you have any New Year's traditions? Is this a thing you care about?
Not New Year's. We will for Epiphany. I mean, I have a tradition. Although we really haven't carried that out with our
There
kids.
are probably a lot of people listening that don't know what Epiphany is. Not what a Epiphany is or an Epiphany, but what you're
that
referring
would
to.
be the traditional date that the three kings came and gave, the Magi came and gave gifts to the Christ child.
You referred to that in your message.
I referred to that in a message.
You called it
recently.
Three Kings Day.
Three Kings Day.
And I had no idea what you were talking about.
Yep.
But I have heard of Epiphany before. But I hadn't heard the phrase Three Kings Day.
And I was looking
And I
that
had that
up
in my
on
notes.
Your
phone?
No,
Google.
Google. Yes, that's what I was looking it up on.
The encyclopedia?
I know how to do these things. I just don't know what to call them when I'm doing it. And I did look it up because I was looking for a book.
Okay.
That is The Tale of Three Kings, which had an impact on my life. And it's not about the three kings of the Magi. But as I was looking for that book, it kept coming up.
Gotcha.
The Three Kings Day.
Again, I would love to ask you if you had a great Christmas, but we're also recording this before Christmas. But we hope all of you had a really great Christmas.
And in anticipation, yes.
And
I have already decided I'm going to have a great Christmas, so it's a done deal.
into the future. I hope, I'm sure you had a great Christmas. I'm glad
Yes.
future you had a really great Christmas.
Because I think a lot of times you can decide in advance.
I think that's
what
fair.
you're going
Yeah,
to enjoy.
I think that's fair.
And I have decided this is going to be awesome. All my kids will be together, and
That's nice.
That will be wonderful.
I had we've discussed this before, maybe not on the podcast. I do not like large groups of people. It drains me, and it's just, that's not my wheelhouse, which people are often surprised about because I'm David. Hey, everybody. But big groups really, really drain me. And I didn't have a big family. Like, it was just the four of us. I had 2 aunts and 1 grandma who lived in Minnesota. And then I had an aunt and uncle, 2 cousins, and a grandma and grandpa that lived in Arizona. That's my entire extended family. And so I wasn't used to like large family things. And then I started dating Joanna and going to her family events where they all live within like a 5-mile radius of one another. And there's thousands of them. And I still remember going to the first Christmas over there and being like, how do you function? Like, we're all in this house and you can't even walk because there's so many people. Because at that point, all the cousins, like Joanna's level of cousins, were still around too. And yeah, I had to, like, in future years, like, very intentionally think about the things that I was looking forward to. Like, oh, I'm very excited to talk to, this uncle of Joanna's that always wants to ask me about my basketball team or talk about the Gophers, or these cousins that I really get along with, because I would dread, like, not the people and not her family, but the large group setting. It just would always wear me out. So I had to, like you said, like, I'm going to have a good time at this family get together because I can choose to have a good attitude.
As an introvert myself, I enjoy people and enjoy connecting one-on-one, but I feel the same way. I don't like large groups of people, but that then gets translated, oh, you don't like people.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not exactly what I was trying to say. So I have to be careful. So Pastor
Mark doesn't like you.
I will not say that I do not like large groups of people. I like people.
That's good. That's good.
Smaller quantities.
Yeah, instead of saying I don't like large groups of people, you should just say I like small groups of people.
Yes, I do.
Very, very small groups of people. Yeah, that's good.
I like one-on-one connections.
Yeah, I mean, that's my preference. Or even like now that I'm married, like another couple and us it's kind of like a one-on-one situation. I love that's certainly my wheelhouse. But even a small group, that's actually a small group. I don't know if you've ever been a part of a small group and you're like, there are 17 couples here. Like, how did our small group become 34 people? Joanna and my first small group when we got married was that way, because our church had a lot of young married people in it and young families. And all of a sudden we were like, this is not a small group anymore. This is just a church that meets in a house. Yes. So then we had to split off. But
and we're that way when we have company. I want just like one other couple so we can sit and actually talk. And Paula's going, if I'm going to do all this cooking and everything, let's have 20 people over.
A lot of people to enjoy it.
But then you never really get to just visit with individuals. And I really value one-on-one communication.
This does not mean that those of you that like large groups of people are wrong.
Absolutely.
But you are. Like, that didn't mean it, but I'm saying it right now.
You're just wronger than us.
Now, real quick before we jump into your message here, you kind of had a standalone message for New Year's Eve before we jump into our next series. But for Thanksgiving, we talked a little bit about how you guys go out on Thanksgiving because you actually want to spend time with Paula. And it had gotten to the point where basically you just didn't see her because she was just cooking all day and doing everything while you guys enjoyed each other's company. Or maybe didn't enjoy their company. You were like, I want Paula in here because I'm sick of these people. But either way, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Pastor Mark. Does she cook a big feast for Christmas? Do you have any Christmas traditions?
We always have cinnamon rolls first thing. The crazy
Christmas morning.
Christmas morning. Okay. But the crazy thing is, my kids have never gotten up early on Christmas. As a child, I remember waking up really early and trying to get Mom and Dad moving, and we weren't allowed to go into the kitchen until Grandma was ready, and Grandma was really slow, and it just drove me nuts. And now Paula and I are up early on Christmas
all
morning,
excited for the kids,
waiting for the kids to decide that they want to wake up and get up, and they are in no rush whatsoever. It drives me nuts.
So you're a Christmas morning present opening family.
Oh yes.
So you do it wrong.
Well, we do one on Christmas Eve.
Okay, so I like that. I'm on board with that. We often do one on Christmas Eve. Because Christmas Eve is our big opening night, and then we do stockings Christmas morning.
Okay.
Are you a stocking?
We do stock. Well, Paula does stockings for all of us.
Right.
Yes. We all have stockings on Christmas.
Do you make sure that she has a stocking full?
I do, but I'm not.
It's not on her. That's kind of what it is at my house.
Figure out what can I put in there.
That's what it always was when I was growing up. Like, my dad's would be great. Mine was amazing. My sister's was amazing, and my mom had like a bag of mints. Yeah. And then like a gift card because he's like, I don't know, but like you can go buy yourself something nice.
Well, our boys always trade off their stuff from their stockings because Paula doesn't remember. This one doesn't like gum. He's not going to eat gum, and you put gum in there. And of course, it's gum and candy is a lot of what's in there. And so they're trading off. That. Yeah, I never eat these anyway, but you always do. And so they all get the same thing, and then they trade off what they actually don't want. In fact, we we kind of do that with some presents too. Okay, I'll wear this color and you won't wear that color, so let's switch. Yeah.
Well, we've always been Christmas Eve people, which is odd because I am a pastor's kid, and obviously Christmas Eve is a very busy day as a pastor, which you know, or even just any church employee really. But but yeah, we've since I can remember we've been Christmas Eve people. So we'd do church, we'd come home. The tradition I loved growing up is we didn't do like a special feast on Christmas Eve. Probably my most memorable Christmas Eve, we had Arby's. Like we went to church, and then I'm pretty sure like Dad drove through Arby's on the way home, and we sat down in the dining room. My mom still put like the nice plates in the dining room. Yeah. And we sat down and ate Arby's in there.
Christmas
and it was
Eve.
Great.
Because we tried to go out on Christmas Day, the same thing that we were just talking about for Thanksgiving.
You probably can't find anywhere to go.
There's no place to go. I mean, you can probably find a gas station that has some food
in Williston, actually. 3E, the Turkish, my favorite restaurant in the state of North Dakota, open on Christmas Day.
Really? I won't be here Christmas Day. I will be with
But maybe
my
I'll
family.
go over there on Christmas Day.
I guess so.
But yeah, that was, I distinctly remember that one. And I mean, I was a little kid. I'm like, I get to eat curly fries and roast beef.
That's great. It's great.
We usually, because Christmas Day, I think it probably happened because Christmas Day, we would always then go to my Nana's house with my dad's sisters were there and do Christmas with them. So we did our family Christmas.
Well, growing up and just what we normally did was go out to eat, not just holidays.
Right.
Every day.
Yeah. I know. When you told us that, that fascinated me.
Because we all worked. This was when I was in high school. Yeah. We all worked after school, and Mom was working and Dad was working. So it's like, what restaurant are we going to meet at? Yeah. And we would eat one evening meal a week at home. The rest of the time we just always
You're just the polar opposite of every other human, where we were all like, maybe once a week we'll go out to eat.
That was our norm. And so to me, going to Arby's, that's like a good meal. I mean, roast beef and potatoes and all of that's like, that's not like a normal eating.
Yeah. We often did. So my grandpa, my dad's dad, I never got to meet him, but he had a secret spaghetti and meatball recipe. And it's like the best ever, but it takes like 24 hours to make. So that we would often have that on Christmas Day when we would go to like with my dad's family on Christmas Day. That was the meal that was pretty special.
Yeah, 24 hours to make.
Well, you're not working.
You know
for
me.
Yes, I know.
And if it takes 5 minutes to prepare the meal, that is just way too much work.
24 seconds is a little too much for you. It's not like you cook for 24 hours straight. It's just like it takes a while to prepare, and then you have to keep, it's not done for 24 hours.
That's not.
It's worth it.
No.
Anyway, let's jump into your message.
I was going to say, what is this podcast about,
by
the way?
You did talk about Three Kings Day in the message, so technically we've already jumped in. Okay. Technically we've already jumped in. You changing seasons was kind of what you had this one labeled as, because the seasons are changing. We were in the Christmas season, and now we're not in the Christmas season. Mm-hmm. We don't have to listen to Christmas music anymore. Unless you're Leo, Pastor Leo, then I think he listens like until May and then starts again in July. But for the rest of us, we can move on from Christmas music. You talked about how you're a creature of habit.
Yes.
A lot of us probably are creatures of habit as well. Is that good? Is it a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think it's a bad thing. For me, I'm a creature of habit on the daily routine stuff. Mm-hmm. Eating, for example, would be the same thing. I can eat the same thing every day, and I'm just fine with that. So it's the minor things that I'm a creature of habit on, just daily routine. I like change when it comes to big events, moving to a different house, different job, all of that. To me, that's fun, and that's a challenge. So I don't think there's anything wrong with preferring to not change or preferring to change. I think it's just some of that's the way that we are made. Some of that's affected by our age, that the older we get, change can be harder.
Sure.
And so
you have to learn what Google is.
And our personalities, all of that. Yeah, have to figure out what Google is. You mock me sufficiently.
No,
I have noticed this.
No, I would never do that. As we just said before we started recording, that's how we hug, Pastor
Yes,
Mark.
it is.
That is how we hug.
And,
In case you're ever watching and you're like, do they not like each other?
Oh.
That is how we hug. I promise.
I have had
I
people
promise.
very upset the way that I talked with somebody like you that I
Yeah.
know well, and we can
Right.
banter back and forth,
Yeah.
and we're just having a great relationship in that, and have somebody come and say, this is just so offensive to
Yeah.
me that you guys don't get along, and it's like, I
And
thought
then-
we were getting along really good. In fact, we were getting along so good, we were giving each other all kinds
Yeah.
of grief. That shows that we've got a great, safe friendship.
I agree.
Okay.
I have a couple other comments I'm going to make, but to prove how great our friendship is, but I'm not going to say it. I do have a question, and I want to show you my note here because you talked about when you went to the doctor and you were going to die because your cholesterol was through the roof.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't planning on
And you
dying
said
at
you
that
had
point.
donuts for breakfast,
Yes.
McDonald's hamburgers for lunch, and
and
pizza
fries.
and fries, and pizza for dinner every day.
Just about.
And now I have terrible handwriting, but can you read my note there?
Let's
What
see.
was my question?
How are you alive? I've had that question come to me a couple of times from staff
Well,
members who have
different
watched my
reasons.
eating habits.
Yeah.
So,
But that's real bad. Like that's really, really bad.
But,
It sounds wonderful.
Good.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful.
It really tasted good, and I still love donuts.
It reminds-
and I like McDonald's hamburgers too.
I'm not with you on that one,
So-
but I was always a Burger King guy if we were going to pick from the two. But I get it. Fast food can be
Well,
delicious.
but see, back in the day, I could get 5 hamburgers
5?
for $1. I mean, this is
You
this
didn't
tells
say
you
you
how
were
old I
eating
am.
5 hamburgers.
Well, that's when I decided I needed to gain weight because I was so thin.
Okay.
Even in my mid-30s, I was still like 135, and I just looked emaciated.
Me
I thought
too.
I needed to gain weight, and so I ate 5 hamburgers every meal for a while.
Did it work?
It did.
Yeah, shocking.
Yes, I put on a few pounds
No,
that way.
Did you do hamburgers or cheeseburgers? Because you said hamburgers.
I think
and I'm
they were
concerned.
probably hamburgers because they were the really cheap ones, the
Sure,
easy ones
'cause,
that they
yeah,
made,
cheaper.
and they
just dump the
literally
onions on
were
there.
5 for $1 back then.
5 for $1.
It was a sale that they had going
Yeah.
on for a month or two.
That's
and
amazing.
So I took advantage.
Usually probably planned to feed a family.
probably
Family of 4. Each
No.
kid has a hamburger. Mom has a hamburger. Dad has 2, and you're good to go. And then
right.
Pastor Mark walks in. I'll have all 5, please. Just mash them all together into one super burger, please.
Oh, so how are we doing on the spiritual depth
Don't worry about it.
of this podcast?
Well, I have I'm going to jump into one of those now.
Okay, good.
So you said God designed all of life in seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, it's not like difficult for me because it's not like this is a specific thing I struggle with, like seasons. But my question is like pre-fall, is that how it was designed as well? Because obviously God knew we were going to sin. Like he wasn't like, they did what? They ate that apple I told them not? Like he knew that was inevitably going to happen. But that doesn't mean he didn't design it perfectly in the first place, right? And then we screwed it up as people. Like, so did the seasons come after the fall, after sin coming into the world, or do you think, like, do we know? Were there seasons
we
beforehand?
don't know, and so it's total speculation.
Sure.
I do know that when he created everything, it was perfect, so
Yeah.
there would be no boredom in it. Now, did boredom come with the fall?
Okay.
So
that's a fair
that we
question.
needed the variety of seasons because of that? I have no idea. I just know that perfection would have no boredom in it, and so now, and when I talk seasons, I'm not taking. And I think you know this. We're not talking just the 4 seasons.
Right.
Obviously,
Certainly.
those are change of seasons that we look forward to. But just seasons of life, that life changes continually as we age, the different identities that we talked about in previous messages. Everything is constantly changing. And whenever there is change, there is a loss of something else.
Yeah.
And so as I get older and my body is changing, I lose some of the agility that I had. And so, I mean, just everything in life, there's just different seasons, and life is going to change, and it's not going to stay the same all the time. And I think that God designed it that way for us.
So maybe different seasons came in because of sin, like death or sickness, right?
Right,
These seasons
right.
that
Those
wouldn't,
kinds of seasons
like
would
those definitely wouldn't
definitely.
have, but most likely there were seasons that we were going to go through even at that point. One of you were listing some of the seasons. This just kind of made me chuckle. This isn't a spiritual depth part. And you said it's tragic if we're stuck in one season.
Yes.
But the season you had just listed before that was death. And I'm like, that would be a really rough one to be stuck in. I am in a constant state of dying. But
going through a season of grief.
well, and that's what
Definitely
that's where I was
fits.
going to take it. And yeah, it's like, there are people that get stuck in that, like it's just one thing after another, or they just can't ever get out of that grief, from
But
someone
that
dying or
season is
whatever.
important to go through that, to
Yeah.
experience it, to process the whole thing. So grief is a season that is valuable. But again, if you get stuck in that season and are not able to move on, that's always a tragedy.
Yeah. I think for someone who is in that season, there's nothing you want to hear less than like, oh, it's a good season to go through. Like, God's good. Because I remember that, and like, man, like I don't want to hear that right now.
Yep.
But what would you say to someone who, okay, they were here in Williston on Sunday, or they were in Tioga, or they joined us online, and they're going through that season right now, and you got to that point where you talked about that, how like these seasons are valuable, and they're like, disagree. Like, I strongly disagree.
I think one of the things about seasons is it's going to pass. You are in a season, and this is going to feel this way for a while. There will be new normal and all of that we talked about, especially after COVID, that it's a new normal. But this is a season, and it's all right to hurt during this season and to deal with that. But God will bring a new season into your life.
Yeah.
And you're not stuck there. This is not the way it is always going to be. And I think with other things, whether it's illness or whatever it is, knowing that there are seasons of life, and right now I'm going through this, but there will be a day when I'm not going through it in the same way that I am, or the same intensity that I am right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it was one of your main points later where you said God is still God even in the difficult seasons. So whether that's grief, or you mentioned like a child leaving home for college or whatever. I think a lot of moms disagreed with you when you said that's a good thing, and they're like, no. And then some dads were like,
yes, this is good.
And maybe some opposites there, but my question was, okay, so God is still God even in the difficult seasons, but is he different in those times? Because sometimes how I perceive him or how I experience him seems different in those times. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad. Sometimes I feel like where are you? Yeah. Sometimes I feel like, oh my word, I can't believe how much he's with me right now. So does he change when I'm going through something difficult?
I don't think he is different, because when you're talking about God, you're talking about his character. And his character is always consistent, always the same. The fruit of the Spirit would be characteristics of God. Those are always there. But how he deals with us is going to change at different times. I think with my kids, trying to figure out what do they need in discipline and love, and both of those maybe at the same time. Different kids need discipline in different ways. How I deal with them is going to change according to what they are going through, what they are feeling, how difficult life is for them at the time. I would want to take that all into consideration. Whether or not I was successful at that is up for debate.
We'll have them on next week's podcast.
But God
is
successful at that. So God doesn't change. But he understands where you are at this point, and he deals with you in the way that you need it. Even two different people going through grief. One person needs a firmness in God, and he will deal with them that way. Others just need to let it out, and God will let them just grieve however they need to do that.
Yeah.
And so I don't think he changes. His character is always the same. But what we need changes.
Yeah. You talked about how he's the creator and he creates beauty out of chaos. And I really like that part. And it reminded me of that song, Graves into Gardens, very popular worship song. They obviously Graves into Gardens, beauty from ashes. They do a lot of those kind of metaphors in that song. But it reminds, so a friend of mine who coached high school here in North Dakota. So I met him when I moved up here and started coaching, and we became good friends. And he had brain cancer, and it came back, and he passed away a couple years ago. And at his funeral, he actually coached at a Catholic high school. So there were a lot of Catholics in the room, but the worship team from his church came and did worship, which was really entertaining. It was really entertaining to watch, like a lot of Catholics and then a lot of just like non-religious people. And then this really passionate worship team from an Assembly of God church gets up there, and they're just rocking out to Graves into Gardens. They played his 2 favorite songs. And, but you know, I think that was important to remember that he creates beauty out of chaos. He didn't create the chaos, right? Sin brought these bad things into our lives, and that's where he uses them. I think we talked about this either last week or the week before, where he uses those bad things, right? And for those that love him and follow him. But he didn't. I think I asked you, like, did he? We talked about my friends that passed away. Like, did he kill them so I could learn a lesson? Like, well, no. But he wasn't going to waste that awful thing that happened to not further his kingdom. And that I liked how you said that. He's the creator, so he creates beauty out of chaos. That was good. Then you said you can trust God's timing. And I want to ask you, how do I do that when I'm in the thick of it? Because right now, that's not super hard for me to hear. Like, I can trust God's timing. Cool. But like, there's been times in my life where I'm like, can I? Because he seems like he missed the opportunity here. And so how do I actively go about trying to trust him when it seems like he's forgotten me or whatever?
I think it comes back to his character again. Do I trust his character?
Sure.
If I know him well enough, then I know whatever is happening, I can still trust him in the middle of that. My boys, as I was raising them, if they trusted my character, then even when they didn't like discipline or decisions that I was making, if they knew me well enough, and I hopefully they did, I think they did, and later testimony they said they did, that they knew me well enough that they knew I wanted what was best for them. They knew what my character was like. Then, even though they didn't like it or agree with it, they could accept it because they actually trusted me, because they knew me. If you don't know God well, if you've not seen him work in your life and have put your trust in him, that's something that builds over time. And the more experiences that you have with him of going through minor stuff and then some bigger stuff, when the really big things hit, you can look back and say, okay, I know he brought me through this and he was trustworthy through this and these experiences. So now that I'm hitting this big one, I still trust his character and who he is, no matter. That doesn't mean that I'm happy with it. It doesn't mean I'm happy with him, even. I'm angry with you. Why did you let this happen? But I still know who you are. And so even when I get over my anger, or even in the middle of my anger, I'm going, okay, I'm not happy right now, but I will choose to trust you because I've known you. I know who you are, and I know that you don't do things just to harm me.
Yeah. Just keeps coming back to the relationship. That unique thing about our religion that's so different from pretty much every other religion is it's about that relationship. And the stronger that relationship grows, the more that trust grows. And that helps you through those difficult times. You said that we tend to see change as loss. And then you immediately followed that up by saying change always brings loss. So we're right. We aren't wrong about it. But then I really liked that you talked about how it's appropriate to mourn. And even not in, we're not in a grief season. Like maybe we were just in a phenomenal season. Like with our kids at home. And now we're moving into another great season because our kids are going off to college and they're doing great. And now me and my wife get to travel a whole bunch. But it's still okay to mourn that season that you lost because you did lose that. Like you had your kids at your house and they're not there anymore. And that it's okay to mourn those things. And then you followed that up by saying God is in the loss. And my question is whether it's in a good season to a good season or bad season to good or good to bad or whatever combination, bad to bad. That's the really unfortunate one. How do I find him? Right. Where you're talking about how I need to, like, the more I know him, the better I know him. How do I find him? How do I get to know him better when I'm in that loss so that I know he's there with me?
I think there needs to be some intentional time with him. Mm-hmm. It's easy for us who have a relationship with the Lord and are Christians and we're following him. We just kind of move through life. God's always with me, and I'm always praying because I talk to the Lord a lot through the day.
Yeah.
But how often do I just stop and spend time with him?
I struggle with that, especially in like the busy seasons.
Yeah, the busy seasons.
I struggle with that.
Stop.
Yep.
Whether it is a consistent every morning I do devotions type of thing, or whether it's in the midst of that chaos, taking 5 minutes, and I'm just going to stop from all that's going on and talk to him.
Yeah.
And listen to him.
Yep.
And just being quiet for a little while, I think, is part of that relationship. Mm-hmm. Because in relationships, if one of us does all the talking and the other one never does, you have a one-sided relationship. Right. And most of our prayer is us talking and telling him, I'm upset with this and I don't like that and this needs to be done and would you do this and we want your help here. Yep. And so we are doing all the talking, and I think we, especially in our culture, our Western culture, we do not stop and listen very much. And I don't mean that you're going to hear something, God's going to reveal these amazing
audibly,
things. Yes, either audibly or just an awareness of whatever. Sure. It's just that meditation of stopping, listening to him, and letting him calm us a little bit. Because if I don't stop, I'm going, go, then he does not have the opportunity to calm me. Yeah. Unless maybe I get sick or something and now I'm stuck in bed and I can't do anything. So, okay, I guess now I'm talking to the Lord.
Yeah. I think, the closer you are with someone, the more likely you are to like take them for granted. Mm-hmm. You were saying like, especially though, we've been Christians for a really long time, and it's easy for us to, like you said, just, well, like God's always with me. I'm always, thinking about him. And I've noticed that the times so when I went to college and I went to a Bible college, and then now that I've been working at a church, it's way easier for me to like brush past like setting apart that time to stop and be with him rather than just because, well, I'm with him all day long. I work for him, like I'm here at church doing God stuff all day. Or, when I was in college, it was like, well, half my classes today were Bible classes, and I went to chapel where I probably like looked at my computer the whole time to see what the sports scores were, but I was in chapel, so it counted. And just being honest here. And so then it's, you feel like, well, I've done my part. So often my wife and I, we'll like apologize to each other because we're like, I'm sorry that sometimes you get the worst of me. Like you get me where I let my bad attitude out or I let my frustration out. And so often I don't stop and appreciate like this is my wife, like my favorite human on the planet I get to be with all the time because I'm with her all the time. And I think we do the same thing with God, where it's especially the longer we've been a Christian, the longer we've been in church, we have to be even more intentional, because when you're brand new, right? Like when I first met Joanna, I was desperate to be around her every possible second I could. I would do anything I could to be around her. I came home from college every weekend once I met Joanna so I could see her on the weekends. But now it's just a part of my everyday life. And so I don't like have to be that intentional because she's always with me. God's always with me now. And so the more comfortable I get, the more intentional I have to be about, I need to take that separate time to stop and just be with him. I think that's important. The very thing you ended the last note I have, and then we'll get into your discussion questions, but you said to enjoy the season that you're in. You said trust his season, enjoy the season you're in, which obviously is easier to do depending on the season you're in. Right. If you're in one of those terrible grief seasons, like enjoy might not be the easiest word to hear. But I was thinking too, I feel like so often we get distracted either by memories of past seasons or like hopes and wishes for future seasons. And we miss that, what you were talking about, that enjoy the season I'm in, because, okay, like this season's fine, but I really miss that season when my kids lived at home. And we miss that, okay, now I have all this time with my spouse where we can just be together. Or my kids are at home, the season I'm in right now. And I'm like, man, it's going to be really nice when it's just Joanna and I again. And you don't enjoy the season you're in because you're so focused on either a past season or what you hope will be a future season. And we miss that mark in the middle.
And when I say enjoy the season, I'm not talking about the extreme difficult seasons.
Right.
There aren't, for most of us, there are not a lot of those in our lives.
Yep.
There are some. But just the changing of life and enjoy what God has given you right now. And I think a real key thing is what you said, is remembering the last season. We take stuff with us into the next season. We take our baggage with us. So if I was in a season, and I shared with the staff some seasons that I have been in difficult churches, and people that were unhappy with me for whatever reason. I come into this season, and you, as a staff person, may make a comment that reminds me of somebody else that was part of my difficult season, and it's like, oh no. I mean, emotionally, I'm reacting to that. Even though I have to stop and say, okay, no, David is not that person, and he's not intending the same thing that I took from that past season. It's so easy for us to carry our seasons into the next one because we take baggage with us. And that's just life. That's not, oh, you're a terrible person because you did that. We all do that. It's just part of what we do. And being present in that season is being able to see, no, this is different now than that was.
Excuse me. Got a little bit of a cold. I've probably coughed into this microphone like 9 times, and I apologize to everyone at home who's, napping, listening to us napping, and then I just cough into the microphone. And
so you're saying
Good
you
morning.
do that on purpose to wake them up.
Right before we hit an important point, I cough really loud, like, good morning, everybody. Have you ever... you are slightly more experienced on Earth than I am.
You're calling me old.
I would never do that. That would be wildly inappropriate. So I always see like stories and even photographs of like elders who had like a poker to like walk through the church to like poke someone in the pew who had fallen asleep. Is that something you ever experienced in your churches? Okay.
I have never experienced that.
I'm not sure I believe that they really existed, but then like you hear other stories of things that happen in church. I'm like, those probably did exist.
I do remember one time when we were kids and 3 of us boys were sitting on the front row, or nearly front row, second row maybe, and the usher came to shush us, tell us to be quiet. I was so scared that Dad would be upset with all of that, and I don't think he ever mentioned it, but boy, I was sure nervous about it.
Yeah, I had a couple of those Sundays where it wasn't fun chatting with Dad afterwards, after like the noise my best friend Matt and I were making during the sermon or whatever. I was like, oh, this is not going to be a good afternoon. Not watching the Vikings game today. Straight to my bedroom.
But I did not live in the era where they actually brought a poker around.
I just wanted to check,
and woke people up or whatever needed to be done.
So now we just cough into a microphone.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Application questions. First you have just observations. So again, if you have a small group that you meet with, these would be a great way to kind of like recap the sermon and then dive deeper with one another, or just your family or whatever. And so what was your main takeaway that you got from the message, and what questions were left unanswered for you? And by the way, if you ever do have questions that are left unanswered, you can either put them in the comments of the YouTube video, or you can email me. I'm David@newhopewilliston.com. That's David with an E. Don't send it to David with an I. No one will get it.
An A and
It'll
an E.
go, no.
Not
Well, right.
an A and an
DAVED
Yes.
at newhopewilliston.com. You can also send it to info@newhopewilliston.com, and I'll get it through that. But we've done that in the past. And if you ever have a question about something Pastor Mark said in his sermon, or something we talk about now, we would love to have you send that in, and we'll get to it in a future one. We obviously can't answer it right now because you're in the future. Congratulations on that. But we will get to it in an even further future podcast. So feel free to give those questions. We would love to be able to answer them for you. Application. Well, let me clarify. Pastor Mark would love to answer them for you. Yes. I would love to ask them, which is my job.
And that's one of the things about preaching is you don't get to stop in the middle and say, Pastor, I don't agree with that. Or did you mean this when you just
Would
said
you like
that?
it if someone did that? Would you like
it? Does not offend me.
Interesting.
Very seldom does it
might
happen.
scare some other people away.
It does. A couple of weeks ago, I was started reading the scripture, and somebody in the service said, Pastor, where are you reading from?
Love it. I love that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have told you that. But that is so true. I think I have covered something or think it's clear, and it may not be clear at all. So always ask the questions because we want to make sure that we are not misunderstood and assume that we're saying something that, wow, that wasn't what I meant at all. If that's the way it came across, I need to correct that.
Yeah. Application questions. Again, good for you to go through by yourself, but even better to go through with other people. We grow best when we're in community. That's how we were designed. And so if you're not in a small group, find one. Contact Hattie. She can find you a small group. Yes. Really, any of us can help find you a small group, but she's the best at it.
Yes.
So, we would love to help you get in a group. Application questions to go over. What have been some of your most enjoyable seasons of life? That's a fun question. What have been some of your most difficult seasons of life? Not as fun of a question. You should have started with the sad one and then jumped to the fun one.
Moved to the positive.
But this one question 3 kind of tags onto that. How has God shown himself faithful in the difficult seasons? I've always found those kind of stories so helpful for me when I've been going through difficult times because, and I've had the opportunity to share the ways that God was faithful to me during my really difficult seasons because it's really, really helpful to hear that from other people.
It is.
And so again, like if you want to jump in the comments and answer that question, I think it'd be really, really helpful for other people to read that because somebody's probably going through a really difficult time right now and they're wondering how on earth is God going to be faithful in this season I'm in. And at least for me, I know it's been really helpful to hear other ways God has been faithful to other people while I'm waiting to see how he's going to be faithful to me. Mm-hmm. Even though I might believe and I trust he's going to be faithful, but man, like I can't imagine how it's going to happen in this scenario. Mm-hmm. And
I was talking earlier about remembering how God has helped you through the various things. It doesn't always have to be your things. It can be somebody else's story that you've heard and going, wow, he was faithful to them. He brought them through when they were where I am right now. Yep. And so, I can trust God by learning from somebody else's experiences, not just having to go through every one myself.
Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously the Bible's full of stories of God being faithful, but sometimes it's so much more meaningful to us now to be, well, that was 2,000 years ago. He was faithful. And then you're like, oh, he was faithful to Carl yesterday. Like, that's great. I don't know a Carl, but you might know a Carl.
And especially somebody that I have a relationship with. Then it matters to me because I know this guy and I know his character and I know God brought him through. So that's so valuable for me to hear those stories.
Last question. How have you seen God turn around I think there's a spelling error. I think it's supposed to say redeem the difficult seasons, but it says redeemed he difficult seasons. But we're going to go with how have you seen God turn around or redeem the difficult seasons?
This is not a session to evaluate how well I can type.
You actually have a shocking lack of mistakes ever in your notes because now I'm getting your sermon, like the notes that you preach off of every week to prepare for this podcast.
I've done a lot of proofreading over my life. So generally, I can do pretty well.
I mean, it's impressive. So just a little peek behind the curtain. I have his outline as he preaches, and then I take my own notes of, the questions I want to ask or things I want to
Which means he follows the outline a lot better than I do.
Also true. There are times where I just like circle a thing and cross it out. I'm like, don't mention this. He skipped it. But... So I see like everything you write, and I think this is the first time I've noticed a major error. And when I was going over the application questions before we came in, I went, I don't know what redeemed is, but you're older than I am, and maybe it's a word from like the 1940s. I don't know.
Maybe we'll say it is.
But yes, how have you seen God turn around or redeem the difficult seasons? Is that last question. So,
And I was not alive in the 40s.
I didn't imply that you were. You just
you
may
just
have heard
said it.
words from, you knew people from the 1940s. Let's move on. Thank you, New Hope family, for being here. Again, we really appreciate you joining us on the Grow podcast. We do this not because Mark and I need an excuse to talk to each other. He's forced to talk to me almost every day, the poor guy. He doesn't have to sit down and do it for 40 minutes.
I don't do much talking. He covers that area better than I do.
But we do it because it's a great way to continue to grow through the week.
Yep.
There's not much more important than growing in our relationship with Christ, other than maybe sharing our relationship with Christ with those who don't have it. So let's make sure we continue to grow through the week. Please ask questions if you have any, and then subscribe if you haven't done so yet to our YouTube channel. If you subscribe and then you go into your phone and you turn on notifications, you'll get notified every time anything goes live. We're having a lot of our music go up from our last night of worship, which is really, really awesome. We've had a ton of people watching that, which has been really cool. But all of our weekend services are on there. There are 2 different podcasts are on there, worship music, all sorts of good stuff. So check that out and subscribe. And I think I asked for this last time, but if you like, if you like or leave a comment, it makes it way easier for other people to find those things. And so if it's something that you do like, we would appreciate that. We appreciate a like or a review if you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That's my whole spiel. I'm done with it now. Great. Thank you, Pastor Mark.
My pleasure.
We're going to start a new series next week, so make sure you're here on the weekend for that, because that's going to be really great. And then we'll dive deeper into that in the next Grow podcast. We love you, New Hope family, and we will see you next time.